Survey. Rome cannot be built in a day, and so the history of the Roman. Here we are, the era of Julius Caesar, Marcus Cicero, and Mark Antony. Roman period probably took place in the 8th century BCE until the 5th century CE. With the influence from Greek thought together with Roman own perspective. There are a variety of historical works being produced. Welcome back to Hi History. If you are ready to jump into the era of drama, morality, corruption, and universal history. Frere Massime.
First, we need to talk about Polybius. Even though he is in this video, which means he wrote something about Rome, he is actually born as a Greek. However, at some point in life, he was transported as a hostage to Rome, where he started to write his famous work, the Histories, which cover from 264 BC to 146 BC. It is mainly about the history of Rome and how it rose to power. It needs to be noted that he didn't have a hard time in Rome because he is both skilled and befriended a general, so he also got a career there afterwards. As a good historian, Polybius' thoughts on history is similar to that of Thucydides, which is that history has its own value. It should be useful for future generations and be constructed by truth. Moreover, he even went as far as rebuking former historians who wrote history as a novel. For the most part, his main theme is about how Rome rises. So, when he wrote the book, he tried to unite all of the related actions of all over the world. In fact, one might say it is universal history. He also reckoned himself doing it from his book, from this quote. Moreover, he tried to make his book as beneficial as possible. But of course, most ancient history books' perspective is political based. But Polybius has used his writing and analytical skill to illustrate the content for readers with vast backgrounds. Basically, even the book is mostly about fighting and war. You don't have to be in a military to find the book being useful. This kind of history is called pragmatic history, and it started at this point.
If Polybius tried to get away from the political narrative, Sallust's work is the one that brings history back to the drama. Gaius Tertius Crispus lived between 86 to 35 BCE and wrote two masterpieces that his fame has rested upon, the Jugurthine War and the Conspiracy of Cartilini. The Jugurthine War tells the story of the colonial war between the Roman and the Numidian king named Jugurtha. It happened in the North Africa at the 2nd century BCE. Surely it is not contemporary to Sallust, but it is interesting to think that his inspiration to write this work might come from his position as the first Numidian governor in 46 BCE. Another work is the Conspiracy of Cartilini. This one is more contemporary. It talks about the attempt of Cartilini and his faith to overthrow the Roman authorities and become all-powerful. If you want one keyword, which is at the heart of Sallust's work, I would say corruption. With his pessimistic tone, his main theme is the loss of virtue from Roman citizens, especially with the authorities who held power. This is reflected in the Jugurthine War, quote, "But who are these that have thus taken the government into their hands? Men by whom integrity, reputation, public spirit, and indeed everything, whether honorable or dishonorable, is converted to a mean of gain." Venality is the heart of Jugurthine War. King Jugurtha did not rightly receive his power in the eyes of Roman citizens. However, he has bribed many sinners to sway their opinion into his own interest, and thus the public interest, as is too frequently the case, was defeated by private influence. Governing under the theme of corruption, Saulus can be seen to be too obsessive with his negative idea. Did he dramatize the seriousness of the event? Maybe, especially with the case of the Jakarta War, which was not contemporary to him. His narrative should be approached with consideration as well as other histories, but they are not that impossible, since we can sometimes see this theme governs our current time histories as well. Saulus emphasized so much on the morality and its drive toward individual behavior. Surely, he has some influences on Livy work.
Now, let's move to a new historian, Titus Livius or Livy. He wrote from the foundation of the city, which is obviously about the foundation of Rome. Thus, he even went further than Polybius at 386 BC to 9 BC. Unlike most of the other historians, his work is not much based on politics. In fact, his work is about morals. He has an idea that people did something because they were just who they were. Everything they did came from their preferences. Thus, he put so much emphasis on the characteristics of each person he wrote. For a hypothetical example, he might tell that the fact that an emperor invaded every nearby cities was that he is just bloodthirsty. Well, you might be thinking that since he started writing from a very beginning, how did he know the nature of people at that time? I had to say that he might just make it up. So he read other accounts and he knew that this person has done something. Then he tried to figure out what would be his fit characteristic. Similar to Thucydides, he also altered some speeches to suit that person's manner. One good example of this is Marcus Cardo's obsolete thoughts on a repeal of the Lex Oppia. Again, it's very long, so you can read it right now. I hope you all read this speech. And finally, I wanted to point out about the style of his writing. He used different language for different scenes. For example, he might use dramatic vocabulary for the battle, but he might use long clauses to describe the scene. Flavius Josephus was born in a priestly Jewish family in Jerusalem. At some point, he was appointed a military commander at Galilee for the Jewish revolt at that time. However, it didn't last quite long because he was defeated and taken as a prisoner by the Romans. Luckily, he managed to give an accurate prophecy, thus being favored by the emperor there. Therefore, similar to the other historians who moved away from their hometown, he said that he could have both views of the history when writing. At Rome, he started to write his 4 works, all are related to Jewish. The first one is called The Jewish War, which talks about the Jewish revolts in particular, including the part of himself and a battle. It is a contemporary history that he participated on both sides. The climax of this work is the detailed description of the siege of Jerusalem, talking about burning temples, capturing men, and the Roman strategy. He wrote this book to show that in fact, the Jews did themselves no favors. They are overconfident when trying to revolt but ended up losing by a lot. Ironically, the second one is called Jewish Antiquities, that talks about the history of Palestine in order to present Judaism to the Romans. The third one, Life, was written for an excuse of his actions at Galilee. Finally, his last work, Against Apion, he returned to the region and tried to refute the negative comments targeting Judaism and provide the reasoning for the superiority of Judaism.
We have reached the last part of what we call classical historiography. So, let me recap some characteristics of ancient historiography that we have seen along the way, and also pointed out some misconceptions when we broadly talk about classical historiography. John Burroughs, in his book A History of Histories, pointed out 4 misrepresentations. 1. All history was contemporary. If you have watched our video on the Greek and also the previous part of this video, you should be able to say that this is extremely wrong. Many historical writings were not contemporary at all. Herodotus' work on the invasion of the Greeks, Arrian and Curtius about the story of Alexander the Great, and the Jugurthine War by Sallust. 2. Ancient history is exclusively about political and military. This is true for some works such as Saulus or Xenophon, but there are still some other aspects as well. Herodotus also wrote about ethnography, clothes, diet, hygiene, etc. Religious matter was wrote in Josephus' work. Morality and virtue were also reflected in the works of Saulus and Livy. 3. There was no concept of historical change. In Livy's work, he knew that once before Rome, the area has been surrounded by primitive barbarian people. This also stated in Polybius' work. He thought that with the rise of Rome, the change would come, and the universal history would be possible. In Livy's work, he knew that once before Rome, the area has been surrounded by primitive barbarian people. This also stated in Polybius' work. He thought that with the rise of Rome, the change would come, and universal history would be possible. Change has really been perceived by these people. 4. There was a notion that all change is cyclical. Yet it is intriguing to think that eventually history will repeat itself. However, there is not enough evidence to conclude that this is a dogma of the classical writing. Polybius wouldn't think that people would come back to their native barbarian nature, or Saulus wouldn't hope to see Rome rise as a republic again.
There is still a lot of historical writing that we haven't discussed because we need to select some important pieces to present in this limited amount of time. You can check some other works in the description box down below. Today, we have learned that Polybius introduced us with universal and pragmatic history. Saulus, with his pessimistic voice, has introduced the concept of morality into historical writing. Livy continues from the writing style of Saulus, with shades of political to moral point of view. And Josephus tried to incorporate the thoughts of Judaism in his books. Lastly, we have looked at some misconceptions about classical historiography and recalled some main themes which has been introduced to historiography.